Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Steel Shout. This is your host Ace, and well, uh, today I have a special. I have a special band. We have a special band in here today, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first of all, it's 5 a.m. here in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, I'm doing it early. It's an early bird interview. So I hope you guys are gonna enjoy it. I would like to talk today with a band from the US called the Obsidian Resurrection. Band a symphonic death metal from the US. Today I'm with the bass player Josh and the orchestra and the keyboardist synth Danny from the band Obsidian Resurrection. They are symphonic death metal band from the US. And guys, welcome to the podcast. How are you all doing?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're doing all right, man. Thank you.
You know what? Guys, I think this is the first time for Steel Shout podcast to host a band from. I've been doing around like 28 episodes, and this is the first time I'm doing with a band from the U.S. or outside of the Middle East, and I'm excited for this. I know, it's a new experience for me, so I'm happy to have you guys. Josh, I introduced you to all the people who are listening to the episode. Let us know. Introduce yourself. Those a lot of people who are listening now that they do not know about the Obsidian Resurrection and who you are. Tell us who you are, your name, and what's your role in the band.
Yeah, my name is Josh. I'm the bassist. Both me and Danny are original members, so yeah, I'm the bassist.
Yeah, and how it started for you into the music? How it started for you? Let's start with you for in loving the music. How it started for you, being interested, loving the music before playing
Uh,
it.
that's actually started early on for me. I actually really enjoyed at my grandparents' house. They had a record player, and I would always listen to their records. A lot of blues, classical, a lot of jazz, a lot of swing as well. I love Glenn Miller. My grandma got me really into Glenn Miller. Um, so that's when I developed an appreciation for music. Um, it's kind of funny. Every family member had their own different genre that they introduced me to. Like my mom was really into hippie rock and doo-wop and Motown. She got me into that. Like she basically made the Beach Boys one of my favorite bands just because of her. I still listen to the Beach Boys. But and there's my dad. He got me into rock and roll and just straight up normal metal. He was in a couple bands. He was in a Rolling Stone cover band. He built his own recording studio, and at a young age, I would play on his basses. He didn't mind because I wasn't going to mess with him. But he kind of garnered that interest of music in me, I think, at a young age with his basses. And then my sisters, one of them got me into death metal, and then my other one got me into punk and glam rock. So just kind of like an amalgam of things to kind of pique my interest in music. And my dad or my mom, she I think it was a Christmas. It was around Christmas time. I was really young. She got me an acoustic guitar. I tried, I really did. Just I don't have the fingerings for. I got big old bear paws, Even when I was a little kid, and it was hard to play guitar. I did my best, but I really wanted to play bass. And with these big fingers, I was more comfortable. So that's when I was like, I think it was like 8 or 10 years later, I told them, like, I really think I want to play bass. And then my dad, he kind of helped usher that next stage of music into my life. They got me my first bass, and I loved it ever since then. I started playing all kinds of covers with my dad. Back then, we played a lot of Tesla, a lot of Whitesnake, a lot of Metallica. Um, Later on, when I started developing more and getting better into it, some of my favorite songs were by Iced Earth that my dad and I would jam with. He loved Iced Earth. I don't know. It just clicked with him. And so some of the bands we would jam together were, like I said, Tesla, Whitesnake, Iced Earth, Metallica. He unfortunately passed away, though, but it remained. And I carried all of that into Obsidian. So that's where it all started from with me.
That's quite interesting. And I met a lot of musicians, and many of them that they came from family that they got interested in music, and from them, they developed their taste in music, and that's quite interesting for you. I mean, I came from a family that they are not really interested in music, so I developed. It's all developed by myself. That's it.
Yeah.
Uh, Danny, tell us about you. Introduce yourself, Danny. Your name and how you got into the music and playing music.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Danny. I play keyboards for Obsidian. Um, I also incorporated a little bit of cello, um, including with the keyboard. So for me, uh, growing up, my dad is really into progressive rock. 1960s, 70s prog rock. One of his favorites is Genesis. Um, so I grew up around that classic rock growing up, um, but I didn't really find my way until probably eighth or ninth grade, which is early high school. I started getting into more like mainstream, well, it's really alternative rock to start off with. Maybe a little alternative metal Tool, and then I got Slipknot. They came out with their first CD. So I kind of got into them, Korn, a few other bands, and but it just wasn't really like enough. I wanted to find more, discover more. So back then the internet in its infancy, there's a few websites you can go to. One of them was called the Gauntlet, um, and that's where I discovered some of the first death metal bands that I started listening to, black metal bands I started listening to. And then so probably around freshman year of high school, um, I early sophomore year, I was trying to figure out like I wanted to play something. I didn't know what I wanted to play. I didn't want to really play guitar or bass. Didn't really pique my interest. I wanted to try something something different. And finally I settled on keyboards, and what got me into that was actually a band called Moonspell. Their first CD, Wolfheart. Listening to a particular song, and there's a melody line in one of the songs, and I was listening to it, and it's like it just kind of clicked for me. Like that's kind of what I want to do. I want to learn how to play, piano/keyboard. So I had a friend high school who was classically trained in piano. I'd go to his house and he'd teach me like a few things about it, and then eventually I would end up buying my own like little keyboard, and then I started taking lessons for like 6 months or something like that before I had to stop. But that's pretty much how it started with me. Getting into the music that we both, all three of us, love to listen to.
Okay. And by the way, I want to point it out that you enjoyed the Moonspell Wolfheart because that's one. I think that was one of the first. I would not extreme. I would say goth that I got into.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you're a man of culture. You're a man of culture.
Yeah, well, it's. I got into them. Another band, first band from Norway, actually was a band called Twin Obscenity. They kind of mix like traditional, like Metallica, like heavy metal riffing, but there's a black metal influence with their music, if that makes sense. So, the first CD I bought from them was called For Blood, Honor, and Soil. I recommend checking that one out if you haven't heard of it. And then their first CD called Word Light Touches None is really good as well. So, the first death metal band I ever heard was called a band called Deeds of Flesh. So, and actually, one of their songs was probably the first extreme metal song I've ever listened to. It's called Lustmore. So, mind you, I'm listening to Slipknot, Korn. I'm trying to discover other ways of listening to more extreme music, because back then you didn't have a lot like what we have now. It's kind of hard to define. So there's an MP3 track on this website called Lustmore from their album called Path of the Weakening. So I play it, I'm listening to it, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like comparing what I heard to, some of my favorite Slipknot songs. I'm like, man, this is like totally different. And so, and I wanted to find out more. And so it's kind of how I got into extreme music. And, so for me, like those bands that I mentioned, Slipknot, Korn, some of the other more mainstream bands, they're like they're a stepping stone into that, So I don't really listen to that stuff anymore. Slipknot, Korn, I just don't listen to it, but I do appreciate it, because, again, it led me to what I'm doing now in a sense. So, but yeah, man, those are some of the earliest bands: Moonspell, Twin Obscenity, Deeds of Flesh, Malevolent Creation, Opeth. I discovered Opeth on there. And it just kind of grew, especially after working with Josh. We were at a pizza joint. We started talking. That's kind of how we met. And so we just maybe swap CDs. Our vocalist slash guitar player Dimitri, we went to the same high school. So how we met was, I remember it was in sophomore year, and a band that I had discovered off the website too was a band called Witchery, and he had a Witchery shirt, and I had a Witchery shirt. So one time I saw him, and I kind of went up to him and said, "Hey, that's a cool ass band or whatever." And then we just kind of hit it off. And then so like I would make him a tape of some bands that I was into, and he would make a tape, and we'd exchange. And that's how that whole thing started. So yeah, it's interesting how things come about. Looking back on how it all started.
So you met through loving the same bands and wearing the same bands T-shirts.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. I like this one.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like because no one else at school wore that kind of stuff, man. I mean, like, there's no one else that had a Witchery shirt. Like some of my other friends some other people that I'd hang out with that I would befriend, they wear like Pantera, Metallica, maybe a Slayer shirt, but nothing like like a Witchery shirt. So seeing him, and that's when we kind of made a connection there. So and back then, dude, that's when I would dress kind of gothed out, stuff like that. So like my friends that I grew up with elementary and middle school, by the time that hit, like I didn't hang out with them anymore. It just we kind of split paths. I was getting more into music. They were still in the sports, heavily in the sports, which is what I played sports as like a kid, but I kind of grew out of it, I guess. My interest kind of changed. So that's kind of a little bit about me, my story.
Okay, that's quite interesting. And speaking of, since you mentioned that, I want to ask Josh. Let's say before the Obsidian Resurrection, Josh, how you all guys met? And before you say met, you are the bassist, Josh. Danny is the synth and the keyboardist. Who are the other members of the band, the Obsidian Resurrection, and how you all guys met?
There's two more. Well, there was a third. He recently backed out because he realized he couldn't dedicate the time to us reforming, unfortunately. But there's still Alex, our drummer, and Dimitri, our vocalist guitarist. How we all met, well, prior to Obsidian, I was in a few bands. I was in a punk band, which name I cannot recall. And then I was in a basic metal thrash band called The Prophecy. That was kind of my gateway into extreme metal bands, and that's kind of how I met Danny and everyone, because it's kind of funny, like Roundtable plays a central role in all of this, Roundtable Pizza. So the band Prophecy I was in, we all ended up getting jobs at Roundtable Pizza. And that's literally how I met Danny and Dimitri, was through working at Roundtable Pizza. And the Prophecy kind of broke up, and I was kind of just floating around, just still playing my bass, but I'm not in a band. And that's when I met Danny, because, you're on a chain gang making pizza, basically. You get, it's really mundane and boring. You got to do something to pass the time. And so Danny and I started talking, and we clicked on a bunch of bands, Iced Earth being one of them. Danny and I really clicked. We actually spent several nights on those websites you mentioned, like blackandroll.com, the Gauntlet, things like that, just researching tons of bands like Marduk, Twin Obscenity, Emperor was one of them. I think there was, I think we discovered Dark Throne, Mayhem on there as well. Several of them. We just spent night after night looking at and researching different bands. And it kind of got to the point where we were talking about forming a band, and then uh, so we mentioned it, and he mentioned he knew a guitarist, which was Dimitri, the guy with the witchery shirt. And then I told him I played bass, obviously, and then I had a friend named Mike at the time who played guitar, and he was the other lead guitarist, because Dimitri was rhythm. And we had another friend at Roundtable at the time. Roundtable Pizza was our friend Justin. He was our original vocalist, and that's basically how it all started. Was literally coming together at Roundtable Pizza. You know, it's kind of weird how that all happened, but such is life. You know, life is weird. You got to roll with it. You know, and from there we just started jamming, working out what we wanted to do, what we wanted to sound like, throwing riffs back and forth, and we had really rough outlines of several songs that we still have, but they're totally different sounding now compared to what they were back then. Because a lot of it back then was very Metallica inspired, but as you can tell now, you can still hear some of the Metallica influence, but that's just a part of it now. Because we do appreciate a good riff. There's really no solos on our old music that's recorded, but there will be solos, and you know, we appreciate a good solo that adds to the atmosphere, you know, not just something that's just put there just to put there, say, hey, there's a solo. You know, we appreciate a good solo. So that's how it really all started. And yeah, we're here now, 20 years later, you know, because we broke up in about 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. And we had a full album's worth of material. We all kind of went our separate ways to different bands, different things, different projects. And I think in the back of all of our minds, it just didn't feel right because we had all this kick-ass material. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but when you like your music, that's a good thing. You know, every band has that, and we definitely had that too. Because I've been in bands where I've written music where I'm like, this is not me, dude. You know, but with this band, we were all on the same page. That was our baby. And we had all of this music sitting around, not doing anything. And 20 years later, I get a text message from Alex and Danny talking about reforming the band and finishing this album finally. And I'm like, hell yes, you know. So that's how it all started.
Since you mentioned that you were in a punk band, were there any other projects you've been working on as well besides the Obsidian Resurrection?
Oh man. Well, prior to Obsidian, I was in those two bands, the punk band and the metal band, Prophecy. Then when Obsidian broke up, dude, I was all over the place. I was in so many different bands because we had a lot of friends in the metal community, and I would basically go to whatever band needed me. I was like the bassist. I would go anywhere. You know, I was in a bunch of bands. Viral Dominate was one that Danny and I did, kind of like when Obsidian went on hiatus for a little bit. We did a little project called Viral Dominate for a while. That's actually how we met our drummer. Ironically, we shared a band space with the family who's the musicians we were jamming with for Viral Dominate. The older brother was in Viral Dominate. His younger brother was in our drummer's band at the time called Scythe. And that's kind of how we met our drummer. Because we didn't have a drummer for the longest time for Obsidian. For like 2 or 3 years, we were struggling to build a drummer. But anyways, other than Viral Dominate, after Obsidian broke up, I was in Demonolith, Heresy, Demon Reich, Zombie Death Stench. I helped a band out called Dark Cathedral for a little bit. There's so many bands. That's just off the top of my head though. But yeah, that's the ones I can remember.
Okay. Speaking of that, you mentioned that you've been spent the first 2 years without drummer. Have you recorded songs or music without drummers in the first 2 years? That's quite
Yeah.
that's got my interesting. I mean, uh,
Ye-
I met a lot of bands, and and I've been interacting a lot with musicians, and I think the drummer is something that it's like a cornerstone in the band. It's like you cannot get rid of a drummer, and especially here in Saudi Arabia, we have a problem here. We don't have drummers or enough drummers. I mean, we have drummers, but they are limited. There are a lot of guitarists. There are a lot of frontmen, but nearly it's nearly rare to find a qualified drummer. How you manage that in the first 2 years for you?
That's everywhere. It sucks. Drummers, like once you get that drummer, you got to hang on to them. They're always in multiple projects because there's just not that many drummers. Um, we made it work, honestly. We would jam. It's kind of funny. We started off jamming in our friend Mike's bedroom. And I remember one time, even our vocalist, we couldn't squeeze him into the bedroom, so he was outside on the other side of the window practicing his vocals. And but yeah, we made it work. We went from there to Danny's garage, did that for a while, and then we had to get out of there, and we went to Dimitri's aunt and uncle's garage for a while. All the while looking for a drummer. We actually recorded a like a 2 or 3 song demo that Danny's currently trying to find because I don't know where it's at. No one else knows where it's at. But we recorded the demo without drums, specifically to show to people that play drums, like, hey, we need a drummer. Can you play this? If so, let's do this. So yeah, we made that to try and help us find a drummer. And we actually there was a moment of time where it was kind of like we have to do something because Guitar Center opened up in our town. Our town is kind of a small nobody town, but that was a big deal for us, and we saw that as an opportunity to try and get a drummer because we're like, dude, there has to be drummers there. This is it for us. We have to do this. So we planned to go and kind of sabotage their grand opening. We printed up hundreds of drummers wanted flyers with all of our contact information, and we went to this event. And it was lame, dude. It sucked. There was nothing but techno and house and rave music everywhere. The parking lot was set up like a rave, and inside it was just more of the same music. And we're just sitting there like looking around. No one's enjoying themselves. No one's having a good time. You can tell everyone's hating it. And that's when Mike and Dimitri decided to plug in. They grabbed some guitars and plugged in some amps, and they literally started playing our music, and it drowned out all the techno music while me, Danny, and Justin were passing out drummer wanted flyers everywhere. And the security didn't even care. They loved it. They didn't stop it. They're like, dude, this is Guitar Center. This is what it's all about, not this house techno crap. So they let us play our music. And Dimitri at one point even mentioned that he thought he saw a little mosh pit start breaking up into the store, which would have been kind of terrible for them, but awesome for us. Um, but yeah, ultimately that didn't really work. It helped us get a lot of MySpace followers at the time, but we didn't get a drummer out of that. It was only when, because we were starting to feel like we're just not going to get a drummer, like we're going to try to take a break. That's when we went on hiatus, and Danny and I did that Barrel Dominant project, and we ultimately met Alex, our drummer, because his band Scythe shared a practice space with us. That's how we met our drummer, and we finally got over that. And then we're like, dude, here's our demo. What do you think? And he dug it. He loved it. He thought it kicked ass. And I guess Scythe wasn't really going anywhere. So he decided to start learning our music. And I want to say within that month, right across the street, we went to our friend Josh's house out of town. He was in another band called Descend. He had a recording setup, little 8-track plug-in, and we literally just plugged in and recorded the demo that you can hear on Bandcamp right now that's going around online. So yeah, that's when we finally got over that hurdle of not having a drummer, and we were able to start playing shows and start recording and stuff.
Okay. Um, Speaking of, I wanted to ask Danny or Josh, either of you, what could you tell me about the other members, Dimitri and Alex? Are they in other projects as well? And Do you know? What could you tell me a little bit about them? And how are your interactions with them?
Um, so Dimitri lives in Arizona, and he's in another band called 6 Million Dead. So, and he's been part of that band. They've been playing together for, what would you say, Josh? Maybe like 10 years, if that. They have a few albums out, I believe, and they play shows. Um, so he's had that. Alex, he's kind of he's like a gun for hire. He has his main band, Helion Prime, but he's a full time professional musician, drummer. That's what he does. You know, so yeah, his main band is Helion Prime though, um, and actually right now they're in Vancouver, British Columbia for a festival. But yeah, that's basically what they do. Dimitri, I think he's just vocals. He doesn't play guitar in 6 Million Dead. He's just their vocalist.
Yeah,
So yeah,
No other projects for him so far, huh?
no,
Mm,
I do not believe so.
okay,
he's too busy.
busy with them. Um, okay, guys, let me talk a little bit now about the Obsidian Resurrection. There's something that I found it unique when I listened to it, that you are symphonic death metal. This is one of my favorite genres. I mean, it's truly one of my favorite. You told me that you're symphonic death metal. Uh, that moment, I told myself, yeah, now I'm hooked. I checked your music and I listened to it. I enjoyed it. But the thing that I wanted to ask for, since you guys are musicians, how you established your sound, starting with Danny, how you established your sound, how you found that this is the style that we want to go through. Many bands went through different genres until they found their sound.
I think it was more about, so the guitars are obviously the foundation. For me, it is. So they always come first. I don't write my parts, and then they write their parts. And what I put, it's they write their parts. I put my own stuff over what they've written. Um, so that's like kind of established,
Hmm.
and that's the way I like it, anyways. Because that's how we get our sound. I think if it were the other way around, we'd probably be more like a symphonic black metal band. Uh, but anyways, um, so that's how that works. Especially now, um, creating music, it's a little different than being in a band room. Everything is through MIDI. Like the MIDI program is like the guitar scratch track. So luckily we have drums. We've had drums recorded on them. Before before those were sent to us. So that really helps out with the creative process. Um, but as far as like the sound, I've always wanted there to be like just a really, almost like gothic, ethereal, type of sound that would come from me, creating a lot of depth, if you will. So that's kind of like what I go for, what I try to put down in our music, because I mean, if you just listen to it, it's not, it's death metal for sure, some black metal influence, and so I'm just trying to accentuate whatever darkness there is. I want to accentuate that. Like, that's what I'm all about. So that's kind of my perspective on it, I guess. And yeah, I think it works. um I do. I think it works. I like it. The rest of the band likes it. If they didn't like it, I'm sure they'd tell me about it.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the process.
And Josh, could you tell me about it, about finding your style in music?
yeah, I will tell you all about it. For me, I have really kind of, for lack of better words, I'm musically dyslexic because of what I like to do. some parts of the song I like to follow the guitars, some parts I like to follow Danny, and some parts I like to bounce around in that void and kind of fill it up and do my own thing. So I'm kind of all over the place. I think that comes from the early development of my parents trying to get me to play guitar. It's still in here somehow, but I'm a bassist, so I gotta try to keep that at bay. But with Danny and his keyboards and orchestration, that lets me explore that inner little guitarist child from back in the day, because I get to have fun and I get to bounce around from musical space to musical space with him, because there really are times where it's like I gotta really sit back and be like, all right, is this going to be a guitar-driven riff for my bass, or a orchestration-driven riff for my bass? And sometimes I'll make both. I'll make one version, and then I'll make the other version, and then I'll see which one sounds better. Or sometimes I'll try to blend it. Like for the recording process, there's 3 songs where I have guitar version of my bass and a orchestrated version of my bass, and I'm hanging on to those to see which one sounds better in the mix when we're mastering the music in the studio. When we're getting ready to put it onto the album to release it to everyone, I'm saving both versions to see which one, as a band, we all think sounds better. Especially our singing Holy Retribution. There is a very distinct guitar version I recorded, and then there's the one you hear on our demo, but I upgraded it. I added more to it because Danny, he worked with me one night recently. We went over some keynotes over the beginning of that song, and I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can actually branch out with this. So there's that orchestration bass that I have saved. So for me, it really just depends on the vibe of the guitar riffs or the vibe of Danny's orchestration, and to see what I want to do with it. I like to bounce around in that ethereal musical space.
Okay. By the way, what topics or what influences you to write music? I mean, I think Josh, I talked to you about this before recording this episode, like a week ago, when I noticed that you have Diablo a poster behind you, Skyrim, and I wanted to ask you. This is out of curiosity. Some people I met that they write music because they are storytellers. Some of them
Yeah.
got inspired by novels, and a lot of people they got the influences from pop culture. So Josh, tell me, what are the influences for you for writing music?
That's right up my alley, dude. I'll start off this with, I'll answer your question. Behind me, there's also a Skyrim map.
I know the map.
One-
I know the map. I've been a Skyrim gamer for a long time. I mean, I played it for over 600 or 700 hours.
I bought every single version of it. It's one of those games. There's a song, that soundtrack called Starfall, and that actually, I have written something that I have yet to show the guys that is based on that. It's loosely based or inspired by, I should say. And also, there's a song on our album. Can't reveal any titles, but it's lyrically based off of one of my favorite books called The Crimson Legion. And this song has kind of been a bastard because we've gone through like a dozen different versions of the song before we finally found one that we're all happy with. But musically, back in the day, it was driven by that book, The Crimson Legion. And then I wrote the lyrics recently based upon that. Back then, I had lyrics as well. They were more blatant about the battles that the main character Rikus went through in that book. But now the lyrics are more about what he went through in his psyche when he found out about his character's true nature and his character's past and his family lineage. So the lyrics are now mature, but they're still more mature, but they're still about the Crimson Legion book. So yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration from a lot of nerdy things. It just really depends on my mood. It could be a movie I'm watching, a TV show, Game of Thrones. I guarantee that's inspired me at some point. But there's also a lot of bands, like when I'm wanting to get into the styling of what I like to write for Obsidian, it really is a lot of Twin Obscenity, Marduk, and Immortal. Those are the ones that I will sit there and I'll kind of have on repeat while I'm just kind of diddling on my bass, and something will just happen, and then I'll start writing something. And it tends to be ironically mostly Immortal, which is strange. Like they have those riffs that just they make you want to go into battle. It's just how Immortal is. Um, some of my favorite bass players, obviously Cliff Burton, my dad. Um, I really do love, from Dream Theater. Dude's a beast. I used to be able to play some of his stuff. It's been years. I don't think I want to touch it now. Justin Chancellor from Tool. Um, I know everyone says this, but Geddy Lee, he's amazing. Um, so yeah, those are some of my main influences when it comes to it.
Okay, and Danny, could you tell me what are the influences for you when it comes to writing music?
Um, I do like to listen to like some keyboard players like Mustis from Demu when during his time in the band. Arcturus Steinersverd, he's one of my favorites. Um, so those two I really look at. I also like some like early Emperor, Night Side Eclipse and Anthems, um, especially Anthems. There's just a lot of like atmosphere and like just an ethereal aspect to that CD. And it could be part of it from the production as well, but I just feel like the keyboards really add a whole lot, to the music. No matter how simple the keyboards may be, they just add when they're there, they're present. You can hear it, you can almost feel it. Um, as far as like the moods or whatever, I do like Frederick Chopin. That's way beyond my skill level, but just overall, you know, he was really kind of like a moody composer, you know, um, a lot of darkness, I guess you can say. I also like Bach. I mean, he's known as the godfather of music, right? So the father of all music. Um, so, but I also like Hans Zimmer. I mean, his scores are just really, they have a lot of emotion, and in and that's what I try to put into our music. There's some sort of emotional aspect to it. To some of the guitar riffs. You know, where there might not be any, and then so I try to infuse some sort of emotion to that riff. You know, so that's definitely an influence for me as well. Um, and probably I also obviously I play the cello as well. I mean, I've only been playing for like a few years, but I've listened to a lot of cellists, and so like just that inspires me to play as well, to keep practicing the cello. It's a difficult instrument to learn. It's something you got to just keep on it every single day, or at least many hours, a week or whatever. Um, but overall, like for the keyboards, just everything that I've mentioned, you know, if I'm like ever in like a funk, or if I'm stumped, sometimes I'll just take a step back and just kind of, listen to some of the things I've mentioned, and just try to clear myself, and then I can, try to move forward, so, yeah, those are basically my influences.
Uh, yeah, I noticed that. And let me ask you a little bit about your live performances. Every band that at the beginning of their career, they want to say, come on, let's jump into and we'll do live performances. Um, Danny, from your experience for performing live performances at the early formation of the Obsidian, how was it? How did it feel for you on the first time that you got on stage to perform live?
Anxiety, nervousness. Um, you know, my setup was the very first show. I think I only had two keyboards. Eventually, I incorporated a third. So like I had this wall of keyboard in front of me that I can kind of like hide behind. you know, Eventually I would loosen up for the shows. But yeah, just anxiety. And even as we continued to play more shows, that never went away. In fact, it kind of got worse. I don't think the other members, experienced that, but me, it got worse. Unfortunately. Um, and so, but it sucks that we disbanded when we did. Because obviously we wanted to keep going with it. Regardless. Um, but yeah, some of those live shows we played, they were a lot of fun though. There's one venue in particular down in Modesto that we played at a couple of times, and one of them was, gosh, I don't know if it was sold out. There was hundreds of people there. It was so cool. Playing in front of like that many people, was really cool. That's somehow I don't think any of us will forget.
And how was the people's reaction to you when you played? I believe that since a local band with not many people aware of, I think it's a little bit shocking for them or it's a little bit odd. Have you had these thoughts? How the people reacted to that?
I think for the most part, it was all just positive. I mean, for me, I'd be playing and there'd be people like right next to me. There'd be like a staircase going down to the floor, and so there'd be a couple people right there just kind of watching me do my thing. So that'd be pretty cool. That was always fun. But it was always nothing but positivity. We never really heard a bad thing. From anybody. If they didn't like it, then they didn't like it. But it was always a positive experience.
I see. And Josh, how was it for you for your live performance experience?
Dude, I loved it. For me, it was a rush, fed off the notes. I absolutely loved it. I think that's the one thing I miss about it. I mean, it is nerve wracking. I'm glad we're not a live band now because it is very time consuming. Let's face it, you don't get paid at all. Really, you just do it for the love of it. But right now, I don't think I could do it. But back then, I was all about it. I was ravenous for it. The show Danny was mentioning we had a really large turnout. There were people in the back of the venue partying. There were people in the parking lot partying. There was people barbecuing in the parking lot. One of our friends' bands named Chain Sodomy, they brought a bunch of barbecue grills and they were just grilling. And then they called up their friend who happened to own an ice cream truck, and he brought his ice cream truck out there. And so the whole parking lot was like moshing to our music while we were playing, and it was really cool. Yeah, I loved it. There's a lot of shows that have some really good memories from. Like one of the shows we co-headlined with Dragon Lord, which is a side project of Eric Peterson from Testament. That was despite some stuff I won't mention with them, it was a really good show. But there was some other shows like down in Arizona that were really fun that we played because when Dimitri moved to Arizona, we tried to keep the band going. It was really difficult, but we ended up expanding down into Arizona because of it, playing some shows. We played some really good ones down there. But yeah, for me, it was always an adrenaline rush. I loved it, and I there was one show where actually I got off stage and I got down into the middle of the mosh pit and was playing my bass because I was just into it. The crowd was feeding off of us, and I could tell, and I was like, dude, I gotta get down there. I had a wireless system that I was borrowing from a friend Mark at the time. And he told me before the show, I was like, dude, you can fuck it, go down into the crowd if you want while you're playing. I did. I was like, dude, I'm feeling it. This mosh pit for our song Forever's End, it was big. It was big. And I worked my way down into it, and I got in the middle of it, and I was walking out, and people were moshing around me, and people were like, they kind of put their head behind me, you know, doing that stuff with me while I was rocking out to the bass. It was fun. So yeah, I loved it. To answer your question, I do love it.
So, guys, let me, wanted to ask you, starting with Josh. You were enjoying this. You were creating music. You were performing live, and then suddenly, it all came into hiatus. What happened back then, or what
Well,
was it?
it was when Dimitri had to move back to Arizona for family reasons. Um, like I mentioned, we tried to make it work, and it did help us expand down in Arizona. Um, it, you know, I was debating on mentioning this. I didn't even. No one in the band knows this except for me. Um, when we were down playing in Arizona on one of the shows, I was approached by a promoter who wanted us to play a metal festival down in Mexico. And I'm sitting there at the time, I was like, dude, if things weren't going, because things were starting to go bad, because it was really difficult to do this with one of our members like 600 miles away. So I was kind of on the fence, like, do I want to bring this up? Right when I was thinking if I should bring up or anything, to go on having this, but our music was expanding down to Mexico, and I think it's because we were playing shows down in Arizona. It was at a place called Metal Devastation. One of their promoters had someone, I can't remember who it was, but they wanted us to play a festival down in Mexico. And I was like, dude, that's fucking awesome, but it never panned out. But it was because Dimitri moved away that we couldn't keep it going. I'm not trying to pin anything on him and just being used to made it really difficult. But he had to do what he had to do. The family comes first. I have absolute respect for that. But that's why we had to break up, because it was just too difficult, sadly.
Um, and now you're back. So, Josh, what could you tell me about the future of the band since you are now back after all these years?
Yeah, we are back. It's definitely happening. I have completed all of my bass work. Alex is done with all of his drums. Danny's done with practically all of his orchestration. All we have left is Dimitri's vocals and guitars, and then figuring out the guitar solo arrangements. Um, as for what we're going to do in the future, it kind of sounds like Danny and I are really taking hold of this thing. It seems like we want to continue forward after this, but we got to figure it out, you know, because we're not sure what's going to go on with Dimitri and Alex. So right now we're kind of just focusing on this album right now, and then we're going to cross that bridge later when it comes, so to speak, you know. But it sounds like Danny and I would like to continue musically with this. We just need to figure it out and see if the guys are on board or not. And if they're not on board, Danny and I want to figure it out still, because it's so much easier when we're not a live band, when we're not on a label. We don't have any time constraints. We can create music on our own time, so there's no pressure. It's making it more easy to create on our own time. So it's something we could easily do now. So we just got to cross that bridge when we get there. So right now we're just focusing on that album, which we're trying to get out in 2022. But yeah, you know, there's that question mark dangling above us, but we'll figure it out.
And Danny, how do you feel about the resurrection of the Obsidian? I would say.
Um, yeah, it feels really good. The whole thing came about when Alex and I were texting because I moved from California up to Washington State about almost 6 years ago, and so every so often I'll get in contact with friends down there and just see how things are going. So I was texting him, and we're going back and forth, and I had it in my mind to kind of bring it up to him, to see what he thought, but he kind of beat me to the punch because he said something like, "Man, yeah, I wouldn't mind. I was thinking about Obsidian and actually recording that album." And as soon as he said that, I was like, hell yeah, man. I was like, fucking A, dude. Like, we're already on the same page. So we talked more about it. And I said, okay, so I'm gonna write a text. So I sent him the text that I was gonna send both Josh and Dimitri, but I sent it to him first to make sure everything was good. He's like, okay, that sounds good. So I sent it to both Josh and Dimitri. Josh responded pretty fairly quickly. I knew he'd be down. Dimitri weren't sure of. He was kind of a question mark, but about a week after I sent it, he got around and he responded like, yeah, I think the time is right, and it was also during this time when I sent the message out to Nate, who was the other guitar player for us. He was the other guitar player, and because he was in the band, we were able to play shows. Because back when we reformed again after our first hiatus, after we got Alex, we still needed another guitar player to be able to play live shows. Nate at the time worked at Warehouse Music. He's a manager there. He played guitar. So it's like we just kind of had this back and forth, and before you know it, he's learning our songs. We're jamming. We're all jamming together. And then when we'd play, we afterwards we were able to finally play some shows. That's how that was able to occur. So yeah, he was on board with it too, with the Reformation. Unfortunately, he couldn't stick around for it. He just had other life priorities, other commitments. He couldn't make time for it. So yeah, it's just me, Josh, Dimitri, and Alex that are doing this. But yeah, it feels really good. I think it's something that we've all had in the back of our minds. It felt incomplete. I know, like, from the time we broke up until recently, every so often I would think about the band. I mean, back in 2012, I actually reworked my parts for the songs that we had a demo for. So on that demo that you hear, all the keys that you hear were actually re-recorded in my house at the time, and then I just kind of leveled them out so they sounded, so they weren't so loud or upfront with the music, and I'm glad I did that because there's one other song that I re-recorded my parts to that aren't on the demo, and if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I'd be able to remember exactly what I was playing for that song, but we had a live recording of that song, a basement recording that I recorded my parts over that I kept on file. So re-recording the song now, I was able to refer back to that old recording to relearn, refigure out, and then put it down. So I was really glad I I did that, But yeah, it feels, like I said, it feels great. I love it. I've missed it. It's got me back into music again, learning it. As far as keyboards are concerned now, I started playing the cello like 4 years ago because even after I moved up here, the room I was in, I didn't have room for my keyboards at all, man. Like, I have a big 88 key, there I had no room. I just had a bed, a dresser, that was it. But I wanted to do something to remain musically active, so I was thinking, what can I do? And then the cello came to mind. I always liked the sound of a cello. It's like, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. So I found a cello online. It came in a package deal. It's an electric cello, so it's quiet, so you can use it to play in an apartment setting without disturbing your neighbors. So, and then I started taking lessons, here locally, with this instructor who's younger than I am, and he played stand-up bass and cello, and it's cool because he was like totally into video games, old school like 8-bit video game music and stuff, and so we kind of hit it off really great. So I took lessons for a year under him before he had to stop because he got a teaching gig, uh, teaching cello to students, and so it's like, you know, I was done with my lessons, I guess. But I got back into lessons a little while ago. I stopped that again because I couldn't make time for it. It was just, it just was, the timing wasn't right. But I'm still really active in practicing though, so I'm not losing a step. But yeah, I think we're all pretty excited that this is all happening. I know we are. So it's definitely a good thing.
And I think from what you're saying, you get a new experience, Danny. Adding cello,
Yeah.
maybe this would be a new experience for the Obsidian Resurrection. I listened to your three songs, Prophecy's Well, Unholy Retribution, and Edge of Sanity. They're all good, and definitely, I'm looking forward to hear more music of you guys. And you guys are talented. I truly appreciate what you did and these songs. You know, don't don't stop it. If since you're back, I truly encourage you just to keep it going. That's true because you have no idea how much it's amazing your music you are making, and I truly appreciate it. Every second of it, every effort you made in these songs are truly amazing, and I'm looking forward after this gap of the breakup or I would say the hiatus, then come back. I believe you came back stronger than ever, and I'm looking forward to hear what you guys have. Um,
Yeah, well, we appreciate the kind words, man. That's awesome for you to say. And that demo, that's a rough demo, man. I mean, like Josh said earlier, we recorded that in our friend's garage. He had recording software. It's like I listen to it now. It's like I can't even honestly, I can't. I don't even want to listen to it. I'm so sick and tired of it. I can't wait until our music that we're making now is out there.
So
Because it's gonna be so the production wise gonna be so much better. It's just yeah, it's just we can't wait for people to hear our not only the demo songs and how much improved that they are, but then the rest these other songs that no one's heard. And just to gauge what people's reaction. I think it'll be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah. Uh, Josh and Danny, I truly appreciate you being here on the podcast. And I have just one last question for both of you. I would like to start with Josh. Josh, let me ask you. Um, after all these years, after all these years, you've been through different projects, through a lot of changes in your life, in music, and what experience could you tell me or could you advise for everyone, including me? What experience could you tell me that you gained all these years with Obsidian Resurrection? I would say.
I would say drive, passion, and commitment. That's something I've learned and developed over the years. Growing up, I dealt with a lot of issues with confidence growing up, but I developed that over the last decade or more. Um, that is something that I've really focused on, and I think it's really helping me with this music. Um, Going into this project, yeah, I signed on to it, so I want to do it, but I was nervous as hell. But I quickly snapped out of it, so I was like, this is my music. This is something that needs to get out there. I'm going to put 110% into it, and I'm not going to hold anything back. Like, that's something I've had to learn with myself, and I'm trying to translate it into my music, is that drive, that passion, that confidence. You have to have that in life no matter what you're doing, because if not, you're not going to get anywhere. That's something I had to learn, it's something I had to overcome. Um, I dealt with a lot of drug and alcohol issues. That was a major part of it, but I got over that hill, and that's also helping me with my music to help me stay focused. Because the old Josh back in the day, there were times I would go to practice stoned out of my mind on any kind of drug that I was feeding myself, or I'd be drinking or something at our live shows. Nowadays, I'm fully engrossed in the music. I'm putting myself 100% into the music, and it feels much, much more focused, and it just feels better because I feel like I know what I'm doing this time around instead of I'm feeling like I'm floating around in a daze, you know? Because back then it was all about partying and yeah, woo. But now it's like it feels more directed and focused, you know? So that's one thing I can say to anyone who's listening. You have to have that driving passion in life, no matter what you're doing. And with that driving passion comes commitment. You have to commit to it. Um, so that's the one takeaway I have with all of this, and that's something that I can say translates not only into my music but my personal life. So that's just a little after school special message I can send to everyone. You know.
That's quite impressive for the experience that you gained all these years. And Danny, what experience could you tell me that you gained after all these years and the music, and not necessarily the music, all the experience that you gained through all these years with this experience?
Um, I would probably say that. Well, first, like it's for me, it's the being in this band is what really drives me to create music. You know, I've been in, I've only been in like a few other bands besides this. I've tried out with one or two other bands. It didn't really last very long. Um, and this was way back when Obsidian was still going, you know, and you really have to feel the music in order for me to be creative, and, with this band, I definitely feel like I have, a lot to offer, in that regards. Cause I don't really like, even after Obsidian, there was a time when I was not doing anything musically. I didn't have any drive. I just didn't. It's like I'm not making music for myself. I'm not making keyboard, just symphonic music just for myself or anything like that. Like for me, I find that being in a band environment, whether if it was live, if it's studio like what we're doing now, it doesn't matter. That's my drive for making music. If Obsidian wasn't happening right now, my keyboard would probably still be in its case. I would still be on the cello for sure because I started that on my own accord. But, my keyboard, I probably wouldn't be on it. It wouldn't be set up. It would just be the cello and nothing more. But so the band itself is really gets me more into piano keyboard again, and now it's like, there's there's a lot easier access for musicians to interact with one each other and help each other out. To where, I think that even without this band, I would probably still be involved musically with my keyboard, to some degree. So, yeah, that's basically all that I can say about that.
Josh and Danny, I truly appreciate your time being here on Steel Shout. Any last words would you like to say before we end the episode?
Honestly, just I would like to thank all of our followers on all of our platforms. They're incredible. Our Spotify's been blowing up. All of our social medias have been blowing up. Like it seems like they genuinely care and want to hear our music. Like it feels genuine. It doesn't feel generic. Like there's a lot of people on there that I see daily reaching out and talking to me on all these social media pages. Like I know people by name now online and all these platforms, and it's fucking awesome. And I'd like to thank all of them, and just to ask everyone to be patient with us because this new music, it's so much better than that demo. I mean, yeah, because we're going to give it the studio treatment, it's going to sound amazing. But the things we're doing to the songs they're familiar with, plus the new songs we're writing, it's just like it's kind of it's amazing to me. Like some of the shit I'm hearing us come up with, it's like, damn, we still have it. Like there's a couple of our songs, and I've said this in past interviews. Well, there's one in particular, like literally, I get goosebumps from the beginning of the song to the end. Like this one particular song, it's just I sit there and I'm like, dude, we made this, we wrote this, this is us. Like, what the fuck? This is amazing, you know. So I just asked them to bear with us and be patient, and thank you a million times.
Danny, do you have anything else you would like to add?
Um, I guess the only thing would be, one thing it's is cool is, people from way back when who, were our friends who didn't play but they liked the music. And some of them, upon hearing that we're back making this music again, I've seen some of their replies or whatever on something else, and they're happy for us. They're pretty excited to hear it. Again. So I think hearing that or seeing that, it's like that's really cool. You know. So, but outside of that, no, I don't really have anything more to say other than just stay tuned.
Josh and Danny, I truly appreciated being here on Stage Shout, and I'm truly looking forward to hear from the Obsidian Resurrection for the upcoming music. And for all the people who are listening to the episode, please check the Obsidian Resurrection symphonic death metal from the US. Uh, they're gonna release new music anytime soon. Nothing confirmed yet, but we'll be patiently waiting. And all the links for their Spotify, their Instagram would be down in the description. Will be linked with the episode. And I think that will be it for this episode. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please let us know in the comments what are your thoughts, what are your opinions about it, and thank you for all the listening, and share this episode, like it, and tell us if you like the Obsidian Resurrection, and we're looking forward for the new upcoming music. Thank you for listening here. That was Steel Shout. This is your host Ace, and I had Josh and Danny from the Obsidian Resurrection. Thank you, and see ya.